Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is your host, Irliana Samsara of StarSound Astrology, and I am so very honored and delighted and excited. I don't know how many more verbs I could use there to welcome Alex Trenoweth, a very esteemed astrologer. We're going to be talking with Alex around all this Barbieheimer, Barbie and Oppenheimer. I'm sure you've been hearing about it on the internet. I'm very excited because the astrology was so eye-popping, and I reached out to Alex. And why did I reach out to Alex? Well, Alex is an author. I've been a fan of yours for many years, Alex. I'm so honored to have you here. I remember reading this article that you wrote, incredible scholarly research about Mary Shelley and Frankenstein and how their lives intersected, and when she wrote Frankenstein and then the movie premiere, and how all the astrology is so incredibly vastly interconnected. When Barbie and Oppenheimer were coming out, I looked at the chart for the Trinity test when the first atomic bomb was detonated, and there were these parallels with what's going on now. So I'm like, I'm calling Alex. Alex has diplomas from Faculty of Astrological Studies. She has a master's degree in cultural astronomy and astrology from Bath University. She's coming to us from the UK, by the way. She's a professional school teacher as well as an astrologer, specializing in child development, particularly the important life stage of adolescence. She's spoken at astrology conferences around the world, contributed to important astrological publications, and has won several major awards for her unique research based upon her book, Growing Pains, The Astrology of Adolescence. Her new book is Mirror, Mirror, Famous People and the Actors Who Portrayed Them. Got that book? All right, check it out, people. We're going to be talking about this. And there's a foreword by the legendary Julia Parker. Alex is the director of education for Kepler College and is also the principal of her own astrology school called the Rohini Academy of Astrology. And her website is alextrenoweth.co.uk. I'll put the link below, and also the link for her books. So yay, welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much.
So how did you find astrology? You're this girl from Michigan, and how did that happen?
Well, when I was a teenager, my mother was reading, it must have been like a Sunday special. She was reading the characteristics of Cancer, because my birthday is next week. And she said, oh, Cancers are home-loving and shy. And I was like, I guess astrology is a load of rubbish then? For years, because I'm born on the 20th of July, if somebody asked me, what my sun sign was, I'd always say on the cusp of Leo. I would never own being a Cancer because I didn't relate to it. And so when I was at university, towards the end of my days at university, somebody asked me if I was a Leo. And just to be contrary, I say, no, I'm a Cancer. She said, well, you must have the moon or something in Leo. And I had never heard of such a thing. So she did a rudimentary chart. And yeah, lo and behold, I have the moon in Leo. And she said, if she's done the calculations correct, I'm a Gemini rising, which I am. And I also have Mercury in Leo. And I was born at nighttime. So obviously I'm going to relate more to my moon. So that's when I was hooked. And when I first came to England, I heard Russell Grant talking about aspects on morning television. And I just thought, oh my gosh, somebody on this earth speaks the language of astrology. And I knew I had to find them. So really that was the start of my, I was always interested in astrology since that little brief reading, but I really plunged headfirst into studying astrology just based on books that I had found in a library. And I found my way to the Faculty of Astrological Studies, and there was just no stopping me then.
Wow. Yes. So for those of you who are new to astrology or might not know, that's like saying you went to Oxford or something. It's pretty darn impressive. And the other thing too is I saw that picture of you on your website. You met Desmond Tutu at your graduation, and you also, the one I love is you and Rob Hand at a conference, and he is asking you, Rob Hand, otherwise known as God, and then he got you autograph your book for him. I love it.
Yeah, that's true. It's a true story. It was like the most surreal moment of my life, I think, to have the great Rob Hand asking me to autograph my book.
Yeah, that's wild. Alex has a great presentation for us. She's going to walk us through some slides showing these correlations. So if you guys have you've got any relatives or friends out there that are like, oh, you're an idiot for studying astrology, what do you want to hog wash? You might want to show them this interview with Alex. You might want to have them watch a little bit of this and see what they say. So there's some pretty amazing parallels. We're going to be getting into that, and then at the end we're going to finish it off with Barbieheimer. And what did you find about Barbieheimer? Here's Venus in Leo, talking movies, ready to go retrograde. And what an incredible cultural moment that is for Barbenheimer and for all the rest. And the Grand Cross of Pluto. What a new moon. What a new moon this is. And it's this is going to be big for you too, Missy. You got that July 20th birthday. Oh my goodness.
I get Venus on my moon for my solar return. So
wow. Cool. You want to go ahead and show us what you got?
Yes, I sure will. So I watched about 200 biopics. So the rule for my Mirror Mirror book is that it must be a movie about a real person. But we're going to bend that rule slightly when we get to Barbie. But one of the very first biopics that was ever made was Mata Hari, Mata Hari being the very famous spy. Now, liberties were taken, with some of the material, but it is a very, very good film. And I highly recommend, just for the history lesson, going back and watching this film. Here's the picture of the real Mata Hari. And as she got older, and some of the things that I've really noticed about Mata Hari, who is in the very middle of this, and then Greta Garbo, who portrayed her, and then on the transits on the outermost wheel, they have this great connection between Venus was transiting on Greta Garbo's Chiron when the film was released. And of course, this film is about a woman who goes to the firing squad and gets killed at the end. And they also have these wonderful connections with the moon and Pluto as well. And you can see that transiting Chiron is also on that moon as well. So you get it in reverse. And what I found through watching all these films, about 100 made it into Mirror Mirror, was that there are strong Chiron connections for the wounded healer, but also watch out for the nodes connecting as well. The thing about these connections is I'm not stretching it. I'm looking at basically conjunctions and oppositions. I'm not throwing in every little aspect. And, I'm not going into great descriptions of, every little bit and piece of the astrology, because I'm leaving that for the reader. So I'm just trying to get, whet your appetite to watch films in a different way, because people tell me that they see films completely differently now that they know what the astrology is behind it. So my next film is looking at Silkwood, and I thought this is related nicely to Oppenheimer, in that she was a union worker who was protesting about the safety standards in a nuclear power plant. So Meryl Streep played Karen Silkwood, and here's the very beautiful Meryl Streep. And what I find striking about her chart is that she has Jupiter right on her descendant. So she is almost like the mythological Jupiter, the shapeshifter, who appeared as a shivering bird on Hero's windowsill, a shower of gold to Danae, a swan in all these different shapes. And she is very much like that too. She's played in several biopics, as we shall see. And here's the real life Karen Silkwood. We do have a timed birth chart with the Chiron right on her ascendant. So this is quite a wounded person. She had a difficult life. She had a difficult job. She turned those difficulties into something that could be of service to her coworkers to keep them safe. And you can see she has Saturn on her midheaven, and lots of really good connections to her angles. And if we put them all together, we see that Meryl Streep, her Venus is bang on that Saturn in Cancer. And her death, when she died in that mysterious car accident, Karen Silkwood's transiting Saturn was at that degree of 18 degrees Cancer on her death. Very interestingly, it's a movie about plutonium. So Pluto itself is very close to Karen Silkwood's natal Mercury when the movie was released. And what is the movie doing? Is talking about Karen Silkwood. So the god of the underworld is conjunct to the god of communication, which I thought was quite a powerful connection.
Pluto ruling radiation too.
Yes, absolutely. And being a radioactive element. Now, this is the movie that started off my obsession with biopics. It's Julia and Julia. I love Julia Child. When I was a child, I'd watch her every single morning. I just loved how she spoke and how she did all these really crazy things with the cooking and stuff like that. So when I was quiet, my parents knew that Julia Child must be on television because I'm entertained and absorbed by this. But I convinced my mom to come see this movie with me when I was visiting Michigan, and I was just absolutely enthralled by Meryl Streep's performance because I thought that trying to imitate Julia Child would be disrespectful because Julia throttles her vowels and everything else. But no, she was just a perfect Julia Child. And like Meryl Streep, Julia Child has Jupiter on her descendant, which is quite interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so there we go, just showing it again, that Meryl Streep's Jupiter on her descendant. And here's some synastry between the two of them. Julia Child also has Saturn on her ascendant. And all her life, she had thought that she was too tall for anyone to marry her. And she got married quite late in life. She was well into her 30s when she met Paul Child. And they had the most romantic relationship. When I was reading her autobiography, it just blew me away with so many, just the love just oozed out when she was talking about Paul. So we can see some good connections. Here's that south node with the Neptune connection and the moon as well. And then we have the Mars and Mercury connections with the Saturn, Julia Child Saturn, that is. So we got good connection between the actor and the real life person. But, Saturn was transiting Julia Child's Mercury and Venus when this movie was released. And a lot of the movie was about the challenge of converting the metric system into the imperial system for the Americans. And not only that, but translating French into English to be understood by housewives who, for them, the height of American cuisine back then was TV dinners. So she was teaching them how to, the art of French cooking. And then we have this lovely connection over here too. We have Uranus and the Sun. And this is Meryl Streep's Uranus and the Sun on Julia Child's Pluto. So solid connections, really good transits for the release of this film. And Meryl Streep won several awards for her portrayal. And best of all is that she brought Julia Child back to a modern audience. The moment of sensual delight, there's a scene in the film where her and her husband are sailing to Rouen, and the waiter lifts the lid off the pan, and she gets hit by this buttery fish smell. And that's the moment that she realizes that she has got to learn this art of the French cooking. And so as best I could, I tried to get this moment down. But that's this Uranus connecting to Meryl Streep's Uranus, which I thought was absolutely incredible because it's the moment that changed Julia's life, and it's connected to Meryl Streep as well. Bohemian Rhapsody. Okay, so this is quite a well-known film. Rami Malek playing the great Freddie Mercury. And what is so funny about Freddie Mercury is, okay, he's a Virgo rising. Rami Malek's Mercury is on Freddie's midheaven, and we have Freddie Mercury's own natal Mercury right on his ascendant. So the perfect name for Freddie Mercury and the man to play him. The Mercury connections are just absolutely incredible. I, Tonya is one of my favorite films too. Margot Robbie, who we're going to be talking about with the Barbie film as well. Incredible actress. She even sings in the new Barbie film. But in this film, she had to skate 5 hours a day to learn how to take off convincingly. And I don't know about you, when I watch ice skating, I'm always imagining how hard it would be to fall that many times to get to a state where you can compete at a high level. It must really hurt. They must be covered in bruises. But anyway, so Margot Robbie had to practice all these lifts and turns convincingly in order to take on this role. Fabulous movie. So here's a real Tonya Harding, as different to what we would expect from a female figure skater that we can get. She was tough, and she had a hard life as well. If the movie's to be believed, she had an abusive mother, an abusive husband. She was just had to fight for everything in her life, and she grew up poor as well. And she also had to fight against the discrimination of the judges, who were used to having little princesses out on the out in the rink, which Tonya Harding definitely wasn't. have a look at her chart, all this opposition to her Saturn conjunct the moon. That's pretty tough. So bundle-shaped chart with that outreaching opposition. Check this out. Margot's Pluto is bang on Tonya Harding's Venus, but it's also picking up the Jupiter and the Sun as well. So she's well placed in there to understand her complicated love life, her need for control, that Scorpio sense of power. Margot Robbie tapped right into it.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have the attack on Nancy Kerrigan. This happened in Detroit in 1994. These are the transits. So you can see that around 18 degrees, right on the descendant of Tonya Harding, picking up that Saturn, and Venus and Neptune are there as well for Margot Robbie. The whole entire film centered around this incident and indeed marked Tonya Harding's life. She's never going to be known for, doing anything other than the attack on Nancy Kerrigan. So strong connections there. And then Tonya was released when Pluto was on that point as well. So, it's all about the mystery of who was behind this attack and how much Tonya Harding was involved in it personally. The King's Speech, really interesting film about, he's called Bertie, nicknamed King George. He was never meant to be the King of England, but his brother abdicated. And he unfortunately had a terrible stammer. So it made, because a king has to make announcements and speeches, to have this stammer was a great challenge to him, made worse by the fact that he never thought he would be king in this position. So here he is, King George VI of the UK, with Chiron right on his ascendant. What do people first notice about him? His stammer. All right, he's wounded in this way, and he has to find a way to get to it. So Lionel Logue was hired as his voice coach, and they did all sorts of interesting techniques to help him get over his stammer. They played music and let him speak, so he wasn't distracted by the echo of his own stammer. Fascinating technique. And here's the actual speech he made, his first speech on Christmas Day in 1939, just after his brother abdicated. We can see Pluto, the transiting Pluto was right on his midheaven, and his speech was perfect. He had been coached successfully by Lionel Logue, and it was a problem that was resolved through this voice coaching. Check out the North Node, right on that Chiron. Talk about, the wounded healer mastering that particular
destiny.
Skill.
Yeah.
And I have this is the actual time for the speech. It's from BBC Archives. So I got we can use the angles as well as the moon because the timing is right. Colin Firth, the delectable Colin Firth, played King George in the film. So we have King George in the middle, and check out Pluto. The actor's Pluto is right on his south node, on the King's south node. And we also have a Neptunian connection here to Neptune on Venus. So strong connections between the two of them. And this is Lionel Logue and Geoffrey Rush. Geoffrey Rush played the voice coach. So here we have a Jupiter-Saturn connection. We also have the King's North Node right on Lionel Logue's sun. And then we have a connection with the sun and the South Node between Lionel Logue and Geoffrey Rush. So this sense of destiny, because Geoffrey Rush also won loads of accolades as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then just to remind you, first Pluto is on 6 degrees Pisces on Logue's moon.
Wow. God, we could go on and on with these incredible scholarly things. I'd like to move into the Barbie Oppenheimer thing.
We're almost there. And just to say that here we have all these planets pulling together to bring together the king, the actor, the release of the film, and the actual speech. So they're all connected by Mercury. And here's a picture, just a little picture. So are we going to cut ahead to Barbie?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay, so we'll miss out on the Iron Lady, and there's so much to do. Rocket Man was one of my favorites too. I love Taron Egerton. Okay, so I picked this up from Rahal Nedra, a graphic designer. just give him a bit of credit here, a bit of a shout out. Barbenheimer, of course, as you said at the very start, is just all over the place. Everyone's talking about Barbenheimer, and I can't wait to see these films.
That would be poster. That's hysterical. I mean, it's all that existential angst. The Venus glamour, shallow surface vanity things up against death and destruction. It's like, oh my God, if this is not a Pluto Grand Cross with. It's like, and then Venus going retrograde. 90 minutes later, the nodes shift after this new moon. And then we also have the next day, we have the nodal ingress.
Yeah, so this is the chart of when these movies are going to be released, set for noon at Hollywood on the 21st of July, 2023. The only thing I've noticed, I couldn't take my eyes off, is Oppenheimer is released with the sun opposite to Pluto.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing coincidence,
Just a coincidence, right? The sun's almost heading into that karmic degree 29, but the nodes at 29 and Pluto at 29, like karma with radioactivity. And where do we go from here? Are we going to be making the same mistake? And I'm thinking right now, Biden just called up thousands of reservists to go to Europe to fight in the Ukraine war. And I'm like, oh my God. And then Russia is rattling its chains around nuclear weapons. And goodness gracious, have we not learned these lessons? Wow.
Yeah, I just remember Sting's song, I Hope the Russians Love Their Children Too, talking about Oppenheimer's deadly toy. And I remember being really chilled by when we were studying Trinity, the first atomic bomb explosion. I remember just being really terrified. Chernobyl happened around the same time and being very fearful of what we were doing, what we were playing with and experimenting with, and just thinking, we could blow the world up several times over.
And the effects that are just like the cat out of the bag, just like we're talking about AI and ChatGPT and all with Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, all these bigwigs are meeting. Even the father, was it Jeffrey Hinton? Was it the father of AI was saying, we got to put a cap on this. We got to talk. Is it too late? I mean, this thing is just in leaps and bounds, just going nuts,
Yeah. But for Barbie, we got the glamour of Venus and Leo. That is the ultimate glamour, having Venus and Leo. And we also have Neptune in its own sign in Pisces as well, where it will remain for a few more years anyway. But the chart speaks about these two movies and about their very different plot lines and the way they're going to make the audience feel. So I think most people's plan is to watch Oppenheimer first, and then Barbie is kind of like the dessert, the one that, Oppenheimer makes you worry and makes you despair for the world, and Barbie is pure escapism. So
yeah, and I know that Christopher Nolan, the director, said that people are walking out of these previews of Oppenheimer completely devastated. Most of this world has grown up in the atomic age. It's just always been a part of us, and it's almost like you're in the fish and water and you can't see it clearly. I'm looking forward to this movie too. I'm sorry, carry on.
No, it's okay. So I found Barbie's date of birth, but not her time. So we have to be a little bit careful with the moon and the angles. But what I want to point out is that Barbie is a Pisces, and the moon, whether she's born in the morning,
Barbie is a Pisces. I love it.
The moon will also be in Pisces as well. So this is when Barbie came out on the shelves, when she was introduced to the world.
She's a new moon baby.
Yeah, it looks like it. So for this chart, it's just when the people get the first glance. It was probably manufactured and assembled out a few days or a few weeks before, but this is when the public sees her. So it's kind of like when we release a film and the people see it for the first time. So that's why I use this particular timing. So Margot Robbie is not playing a real person; she's playing a concept or an entity. But even though this is going on, there are still interesting connections. So in this case, I put Margot Robbie because I have her time of birth. I put her in the middle and the entity on the outside. And we can see all these strong connections. Uranus on the South Node. This is a different kind of movie. This is like half cartoon, half film. It's being played for laughs as well. We have, Venus conjunct Mars over here as well. A little bit too far out of orb for my liking, but anyway, it's still there. And Neptune on Margot Robbie's moon, which I think is really important for the glamour of the film. And then we have Barbie Saturn on the actress's Uranus. because it would be difficult to bring an inanimate character to life, I think. And Barbie wears really uncomfortable shoes.
Right. Mostly all her clothes too.
Yeah. And then I just thought it was so interesting that transiting Chiron is on those points, on the Venus-Mars conjunction of the actor and the entity. So it'll be interesting, especially if people watch Oppenheimer, like they keep saying they're going to first, and then come to get the dessert, which is supposed to be Barbie later. Okay, now Oppenheimer is played by Cillian Murphy, and I don't know how much people watch my other work, but I have this kind of obsession with Algol.
If you could
Was
just
shocked.
explain if people don't know what Algol is.
Algol has the worst reputation. It's called the most evil star of the heavens, and it's all throughout history there have been connections. Now, I've done a lot of work with Algol and the royal family, which you can find on astro.com. I just attract to Algol. I just can't help it. But here he has Cillian Murphy's Mercury on Algol, and not too far away from Oppenheimer's Mercury. And then when Trinity happened, the explosion happened, Mars was on Algol. So this whole entire movie is around Trinity. And then, here we have these strong connections between the event, the actor, and the real life person. When I saw this
Mars Mercury lineup, that's outrageous.
Yeah, it really gave me a chill.
Too, the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, which wasn't for another couple of weeks, but Mercury, here's Mercury in you have the first nuclear explosion. Okay. So Mercury is in Taurus, right? But the conjunction with Algol. And Mercury was in Leo, I think, when the bomb went off in was it in Leo a couple weeks later? I don't know. I just remember. Oh, I know. No, I'm thinking, sorry. The Mercury in Leo is 18 degrees of Leo, same as the movie premiere, the film premiere. So 18 Leo. So I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. And Mercury, the puer, the archetype of the little boy, the youngster, the one facet of the immature youngster. And when you think about the playing, like literally playing with fire, and and it's just, to me, that's outrageous that a film premiere of all things, this is just, there's this cosmic connection that is just mind-blowing, that I will never tire of my entire life, of these connections with astrology. And Mercury as puer, 18 degrees of Leo, and where it was when that and little boy, that was what I wanted to say. Little boy was the name of the bomb that was dropped on. It was Fat Man and Little Boy. Fat Man was Nagasaki, and Little Boy was Hiroshima. So Hiroshima went first. Well, little boy, there's Mercury, little boy playing with fire, doesn't know what he's getting into.
Mercury in the Trinity experiment. This Trinity was when it's the first nuclear explosion in New Mexico. A test, yeah. And it has Mercury at 19 degrees Leo.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
I don't know if there was a connection there next. I didn't do those other bombs. I figured this is going to be grim enough.
Yeah, really. It definitely makes the point.
So when the film is released, Uranus will be transiting Oppenheimer's Mercury. What are we talking about? We're talking about an unpredictable,
catastrophic. Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what damage we've done. We don't know what we've done to the wildlife. It's all unnatural. And there we have Uranus, transiting Uranus on Oppenheimer's Mercury, also picking up the Algol connections with the actor and the event of Trinity. It's a fascinating connection. And I can just really see why people are troubled by it, because you're not supposed to look at Algol, the Medusa. She's supposed to be the most terrifying thing you'll ever see, and you'll turn to stone. And here it is reflected, in a film. I probably will see it, but I have a bit of trepidation about it. I don't like scary movies, and this is kind of going to be like the most scary movie ever, I think.
Well, then you just buy your second ticket. People are buying 2 tickets for the day. They're going. 20,000 people have bought tickets for both Barbie and Oppenheimer for the same day.
Yeah, I'm sure that I will do that. I'll have to do that just so I'm supposed to be writing I write a column for the Astrological Journal. So I was going to do something on the Queen, because when it comes out, it'll be the anniversary of the Queen's death. But I think I'm going to do Barbieheimer. Get it written up. I think we reached the end of my slides. Just a little bit more about me. I mean, these are all the things I'm involved in my books. What my hair used to look like before COVID.
Awesome.
um, and my website and all the ways you can contact me if you have any questions or just want to say hi.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. This has really been, the correlations are just mind-blowing. And like you said, these are just little bits that can lead us. There's a deeper rabbit hole than all this, but it gives us a sense of things. And in your book, of course, Mirror, Mirror goes into many, many more examples. And yeah, I'd like you to come back when the school year starts and we can maybe talk about astrology and adolescence and everything that is in that book, and what good tips for parents and things like that, and how they can work with their children and hopefully the school teacher. So
Yeah, I would love that.
yeah, so that's all for now. And if you want to reach Alex, again, it's alextrenoweth.co.uk. All right, everybody, please leave your comments below. Tell us, are you going to go see Barbieheimer? Or are you going to buy one of these existential dread t-shirts? It shows Barbie, it's like a Barbie logo, and then on top, I've seen these, it says, "I am death, the destroyer of worlds," which is what Oppenheimer spoke. He studied the Bhagavad Gita and studied Sanskrit, and when the bomb went off, the Trinity test bomb, that's what he spoke from the Gita. So it was very interesting. But then to see this, it was very kind of disarming and disturbing to see this on a cutesy Barbie t-shirt. It's such a jarring, thing about Venus can bring war. Most people think of Venus as just this la-la candy colored pink Corvette of Barbie, but there's this other side. Like when you think about the Pentagon, the 5-star shape is Venus's the symbol, right? The pentacle. So it definitely has that war element. So it is just, to me, it's fascinating that both of these things came together on the same release day.
Venus is the morning star, and the expression is Venus gets men up for war when she's a morning star. In the evening, she puts men to bed. So we get that. It's very two different sides of Venus, but in the morning, she is the warrior goddess.
The warrior goddess. Yeah, she is. All right, my dear. Well, thank you again. And thank you so much again for listening. This is Irliana Samsara and Alex Trenoweth. We'll see you soon. Take care now.